On behalf of our Board of Trustees and governors, the faculty, administration, staff, and nearly 40,000 students, I'd like to welcome everyone to Union County College. My name is Maggie McMenamin. I'm the president of Union County College, and we are delighted to be hosting this event, New Jersey State of Union County 2012, one in a series of 12 county and regional events across New Jersey. As we begin today's session, which will be a 3-panel session, I will introduce Rebecca Perkins, the president of the Council on State Public Affairs. Rebecca.
Thank you, Dr. McMenamin. It's a pleasure to be here this morning at Union County College. We want to thank you for hosting the event. This entire series is being done in partnership with the New Jersey Council of County Colleges, and we'll talk a bit about that. But we've been delighted to see the incredible facilities that we've got across the state. And we're delighted to have our distinguished panelists here this morning to open our session with a discussion on the economy in Union County. To my left is Jim Coyle, who's president of the Gateway Regional Chamber of Commerce based in Elizabeth. To my right is Assemblyman John Bramnick, who's minority leader. And to the far right, which is different for the senator on my far right.
Hey, I'm not to the far right.
Can't even get started without the joke.
That's
Senator
sure.
Ray Lesniak, who chairs the Economic Development Committee. Welcome to everyone this morning, and thanks for being here. The purpose of the series is we do a State of the State event at the end of November, where we look at New Jersey, and this year it's titled Road to Recovery. And as we build up to that series, we're doing these events to kind of build a micro view from the ground up, what people are saying and feeling about the economy, and what counties and municipalities are doing to repair the economy. So I'd like to start, let's start with you, Senator. What's your take on Union County? How are you doing in recovery from the Great Recession? Just generally when you talk to your constituents, what's the
Well,
feeling?
I mean, Union County is like most other counties in New Jersey. We're not doing all that well, and we need to do better. My focus obviously is Elizabeth, my hometown, where I grew up and reside and where I represent, along with Roselle, Hillside, and Union. And what we're looking to do is to establish an identity. I think that's really important. Assemblyman, I've been working on this for quite a while. We have some irons in the fire. We're working very closely with Kane University. Assemblyman Bramnick and I work very closely with Kane and with Union County College to be the focal point, the fulcrum of some economic development. You know, we're not there yet, but we're on the border, and that's, I think, what we need. We need an identity that we just haven't achieved yet, but we'll get there if we keep trying, and I know we will.
Great, and we'll focus more a bit later in the discussion on some of those specific programs. Assemblyman, you're Union County as well, but a different end of the county. In some respects, it's almost a different county than the part of the county that Senator Lesniak represents. What's your take on the economy, and what do you hear from your constituents in Union County?
First, let me congratulate Dr. McMenamin, because she's brought incredible energy to Union County College. She's a real winner, as we say, and I'm proud to be here, and she's just awesome in terms of what she does. She is a better golfer than I am, and she's an incredible athlete and an incredible leader. So, to answer your question specifically,
My grandmother's a better golfer than you are. So.
Generally, we get along, except on athletic events. That's where we have most of our conflict. Economic development, we agree on golf. I have played with you, actually.
Yes, I agree.
So the answer to your question is, most people in New Jersey believe we're heading in the right direction, and that's changed over the last couple of years. That's really important, because I think in business and in the economy, it's what people think that's most important. If you go to buy a house and you think someone's going to buy that house tomorrow, and I've heard this many times, another bid's coming in, you tend not to wait and you buy. If you think the price is going down the next day, you don't buy. So once we get the heads in the right direction, which I think we have, then hopefully what follows is a robust economy. I have to speak more at the state level than I do at the county level, because the numbers I see, most of the statistics emanate from the state. And there's a whole host of programs that we work together on, myself and the senator, as well as the administration. And let me start off by telling what I think is the most important program. The lieutenant governor has taken the lead on this. She gives her cell phone out, and they have what's called the Business Action Center. That's a one-stop shop for businesses. So if you have a permit problem, you have an application problem, you want to know about a loan or a grant, that's where you go. So let's put that out there. And I hope that begins to answer your question.
Great, and we'll follow up on that a bit more later. Jim, you can speak to the county because that's obviously your Union County. Your members are the bulk of what small business in that portion of the county, Elizabeth, Linden, Rahway. Tell us where your members come from, and tell us what your sense is anecdotally, what the members are feeling.
Okay. Well, first, just a little bit of background on the Gateway Regional Chamber of Commerce. We're about 1,200 members, and we actually run the gambit from the largest manufacturers, utilities, transportation companies, down to small home-based businesses. Under our umbrella, there are 9 different chambers and organizations that work locally. In those local chambers, we have much more retail participation. So we really do see a gambit of different types of businesses. We are actually a regional organization. The bulk of our members are in Union County, but we cover all of northern New Jersey. And we actually have members in the UK and Malaysia and Texas and far off places like that. But what we're seeing from the economy, from an economic perspective, frankly, is a lot of malaise. There have been a lot of positive changes that have occurred on a statewide basis over the last couple years, and I think people feel good about those. But I would also agree with the senator that we are still trapped in the very beginning of the road to recovery, and people just aren't starting that process yet. And frankly, it's because of a lot of reasons, mainly dictated by the national economy, and state and local activities have very little to do with it. But as the Assemblyman said, when people start to feel better, the economy does pick up. But during a presidential election, nobody's ever going to feel better because you have 2 candidates telling us all how bad things are. So we're going to continue.
How bad each other.
How bad each other are as well. So I think we're really in a holding pattern here without a lot of enthusiasm or optimism, at least in the short term.
Now that sounds kind of bleak. But,
it is pretty bleak.
Okay. Union County is a little bit unique as well in that Union County really had a manufacturing economy. So even before the recession of 2008, 2007, 2008, obviously with the economy changing and manufacturing moving out, I think Union County started to really retool, if you will, the economy some time ago.
Yeah, and we certainly have to. I mean, when I started in government back in the last century, it was a long time ago. But
repairing horses and buggies.
There you go, exactly. I represented the city of Linden. And my district, included Clark and Rahway and Elizabeth, was the most highly concentrated chemical industry in the nation. Now that hardly exists. In some respects for the better if we had taken those properties and developed them more in an environmentally sound fashion, and that's been slow in coming around. What I believe we need to do is focus more on port development. The port of Elizabeth, Newark, is a great employer, and it's the biggest job creator and economic development generator for our state, I believe. I was also disheartened when the governor killed the tunnel to New York. Towns like Summit and Westfield, Cranford would have seen a real boost in their economic development if that connection had taken place. But we need to improve our infrastructure. The Elizabeth train station needs a vast overhaul. Now, I know it's in the works, but we need to do better, because if that train station is made to be revitalized, kind of like the Sea Caucus station, new, bright, welcoming to people, that will boost economic development, investment in Elizabeth and in the entire area. So there's a lot of things that government still can do to help Union County. Some things we should have done, we didn't, but some things we still need to do, and we have to move forward.
We were in Hudson County yesterday, and a lot of discussion up there about infrastructure. First of all, because you've got such a densely populated county, which obviously it spills over into Elizabeth and a lot of your area as well. So the population needs are just immense for transportation, but also the construction and the jobs that would provide to repair the infrastructure. Speaking to the port, obviously the port expansion that's planned for what I believe next year, shipping, hopefully the dredging, everything will increase that, and the traffic is expected to increase. That should have a positive impact, I would think, on the economy.
Assemblyman, if I may, since I did take a shot at the governor, well-deserved one in terms of killing the tunnel project, I want to give him kudos for supporting the Balaam Bridge lifting. Because without that support, I've been very supportive, as my colleague Assemblyman Bramnick has, that would have cost us thousands of jobs and hundreds of millions of dollars in revenues. So again, that's a much needed infrastructure program, and that's really where you hit the nail on the head. For Union County to advance out of this economic doldrums, one of the keys is infrastructure investments and improvements.
And Assemblyman, what's your take on that? I mean, how close are we to actually seeing something like that happen?
Well, let's look at the overview. And the overview is Governor Kane used to say that to his staff, that I will not support a program that makes us less competitive than our contiguous states. What he basically said, you can't raise the taxes above the levels of either New York or Pennsylvania, and you have to stay competitive. What's happened over the last 10 to 15 years, we've lost our competitive edge. So when the senator talks about stopping government programs, that's also stopping more government expenditure and hopefully starting to slow down that increase in our tax rates and our tax burden. So once you spend, you have to weigh the obvious problem of raising taxes. And one thing that most people will tell you why they move to Florida or why they relocate their business is taxes and red tape. So that broad approach that I think this governor is taking with the Lieutenant Governor's Red Tape Commission is the beginning of recognizing the problem. Now, I grew up in a small business. My dad had a store in Plainfield for 50 years.
Remember it.
It had 5 or 6 employees, and it was open 7 days a week. I get it, okay? And I remember as regulations and taxes started to increase, and the burden of doing business became more and more difficult, it was tougher for him. So that's kind of a first-hand look at that problem of government. With respect to infrastructure, I am so proud, and I worked with Senator Lesniak and others, and one of the prime sponsors of the bill, to float a bond act in order to rebuild our colleges and universities. Their infrastructure needed in terms of more dormitories, more facilities, was obvious and is obvious to almost everyone in Trenton. Hopefully that's an incentive for job growth, and it's the beginning of this revitalization of New Jersey's infrastructure.
You know, we've got a classic, government, business, almost worker, business owner kind of argument here, Democrat, Republican, jobs versus taxes. Let me ask Jim, your members, they want business, they want jobs. I mean, from this perspective, obviously, as a business owner, you understand that the owner's taxes, the tax requirements. What are your members thinking? I mean, what would their response be to something like this?
Well, I think they would definitely agree with Assemblyman Bramnick that the...
As opposed to Senator Lesniak?
Well, they would agree with you on some things.
By the way, as you know, I've been the sponsor of the major tax incentive program signed by Governor Corzine, by the way. Urban Hub, and New Jersey Grows. New Jersey Grows was signed by Governor Christie, the other two by Governor Corzine. The most powerful economic development tools that exist in the nation. As a matter of fact, Wakefern would not still be in Elizabeth, but not for that legislation.
Mm-hmm. I guess this is the classic debate, that we've got here, and certainly business owners for both sides of it. But Senator Lesniak, I know you've done a lot of work.
I cut off.
Senators are allowed to do that.
He did answer the question.
So everybody in New Jersey is concerned with taxes. We all feel that we pay way too much for the services that we get. We, as businesses, are also very concerned with regulation, because this is one of the most heavily regulated states in the country. And it's regulated for reasons. It's also the most densely populated. It is one of the oldest manufacturing centers. You have reasons for these, this body of regulation, and you have reason that taxes are as high as they are. But both of those things do put a definite damper on business. The transportation network and infrastructure more generally is another big concern, because that really is a government function and requires tremendous investment. The problem that we see is that nobody wants to make that investment. Nobody wants to pay for it. So what we have done as a state, and what New York has done, is that we've put a lot of this burden on the Port Authority, because the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey is an independent, congressionally chartered agency, has the ability to raise tolls. And that toll money then goes and is used to repair roads, bridges in both states. And it's because the states themselves have little stomach for actually raising the money to make the investment in their own transportation network. But transportation is just one part of infrastructure. Our water network here, sewers and water delivery systems, are among the oldest in the country. Some of these things date back 200 years. Gas lines are leaking and in need of repair. Power generation and power delivery are all in need of huge investment. Now, in that case, some of our companies who are my members are willing to make that investment, but then they get caught up in the red tape. They get caught up in the not in my backyard mentality. No one wants to see a power line running through the center of their town, but when our refrigerator doesn't work because of a thunderstorm, we get very upset. And those two things are tied together. And you have to be willing to make that investment.
And this is why you guys get paid the big bucks as legislators in New Jersey, is to try to balance all of this.
Let me add one other thing that we've left out, and that's the federal government. We have to get beyond this election, because nothing's going to happen, and nothing's happened for the last year or even more. But hopefully, after we get past this election, you favor, what's his name? Bramnick. I'm, of course, in favor of President Obama, but regardless, we have the enormous infrastructure needs of this state, and Union County in particular, cannot be solved by the state alone. We need the partnership with the federal government. And as long as we have a federal government that says, you know, not my problem, that's going to be a problem. But hopefully, you know, working together, Republicans and Democrats in New Jersey have had a tradition over many, many years of working together. We can work with our congressional delegation to get them invested, as the federal government invested as well.
So, go ahead.
We should put this show on tonight, directly across from the presidential debate.
This might be a little livelier than the presidential debate tonight.
And we can figure out which is the major misstep during this debate. I mean, when you invaded my space there for a minute, I noticed that.
The talking heads have to be analyzing it.
Yeah, Mitt does that, right? He gets $10,000.
Right. No, I think it was Gore that invaded President Bush's space. There he goes again.
By the way, I bet this is the funniest panel you've had.
This is absolutely.
It's the third time he hit me. I'm telling. Where's the teacher? Where's the teacher? I can take it though. Government, I think, historically, was not great at identifying long-term needs and addressing long-term needs. We as politicians, you know, a lot of us were president of student council, and we were freeholders or assemblymen, and we tend to say yes. And we try to help people because it's kind of our nature, and we want to be liked. Well, over the last 20 years, Republican and Democrats have made a lot of mistakes by not really viewing the big picture, making those tough decisions, looking out 20 or 30 years. It's similar to companies on the stock market. They want to know how they did the next quarter, how the politicians did in the next election.
Right.
So when things start to crumble, And you can see why, because no one wanted to spend large amounts of money. They were afraid about the next election. Now all of a sudden we're heading towards this crisis with bridges, with tunnels. So at some point, strong leadership on both sides, biting the bullet and saying, hey, you know, we're going to have to go out and we're going to have to fix these problems.
You have to make investments as well.
And if both sides come together and do that and take the heat, I think the public gets it. And most of the analysis you do is the public will respect you if you stay on course with your opinion and stay strong about it. And I think it was Governor Christie said the other day, said, we shouldn't follow polls, we should change polls. And that's really the job of elected officials. And with the crisis looming with respect to infrastructure, we're going to have little time and little choice but to do that.
So that's what should happen.
Will
it happen?
Well, you're in Trenton in the hallways, and you stop somebody and say, by the way, why don't we do a major expenditure and another bond act in terms of infrastructure? Oh, shh. Did you mention taxes?
It's like gas tax, right?
Right. Well,
you can't say that.
Right. Tax is a bad word. But at some point, the crisis will hit, and we have to be prepared in advance of that crisis to begin to fix it. And Jim's absolutely right. And businesses, they go like, hey, they're looking down the road, and they really want to see that infrastructure available.
There is one other way, by the way, and that is to, well, not mutually exclusive, have to be worked together, is public-private partnerships. You talked about the crumbling sewer systems, water lines and all. Those things can more, and even bridges, tunnels, can be built with public-private partnerships that just don't include investment of tax dollars.
It sounds like the Republican response.
Exactly. Well, you know,
that's absolutely correct.
Yeah. And I actually like to call them even private-public partnerships. And as a Democrat, I embrace that. I've embraced that for quite a while. And I think more and more Democrats will join with Republicans on that, because we can't expect the government to do it alone. It's not going to happen. And it has to happen.
We're almost at the end of this time. Hard to believe. The time has flown here. But let me ask each of you. We're going to start with Jim. If you could characterize briefly what do you think is the best thing that's happened for the Union County economy in the past year, and also something that's had the most negative impact on the economy. What would you say those two things, the most positive, most negative, would be?
Well, actually, I again would have to put those into a national perspective, because Union County does not operate in a vacuum. And while there may be positive things of, you know, a new Walmart opening or this and that, it doesn't really change the game. Mm-hmm. So the most negative thing actually is a continuation, and that is a continuation of a crisis in liquidity. Banks are not lending money, and for businesses, especially smaller businesses, to get money is almost impossible. Larger businesses are sitting on huge reserves, but because their demand is so low, they're not spending those, they're not expanding. And so until we get the banks much more freely lending money, we're not going to solve the housing crisis, and we're going to keep small business from expanding. And unfortunately, I can't really think of anything tremendously positive in the past year that that I can say has really been a game changer.
Okay. Assemblyman?
Once again, I don't want to be county specific. I think the feeling that I believe that Governor Christie and his administration has created, the feeling that things are on the right track and businesses actually starting to believe that New Jersey's on the right track, that's what keeps businesses in Union County. It helps to incentivize businesses to expand in Union County, and it gives a reason for people not to move out of Union County or the state. I think that's the direction we need to continue to go in.
Okay. And any one factor you can point to as having a negative impact?
Well, taxes. Look, the county government, the local governments, the state government have to understand they have to understand clearly that there's a crisis point when you overtax people and they're gone. And I think government is starting to get it.
Senator?
Well, we need more than feelings, we need action. The road to hell is lined with good intentions. We have had action. Wakefern decided to stay in Elizabeth and build an 800,000 square foot facility. The Port Authority moved the ball down the road in terms of lifting the Bayonne, the Bayonne Bridge. Incredibly important. We have had some negatives. Shering plows closing. The killing of the tunnel, Governor Christie, really hurt the economy of New Jersey. But we'll recover from both. We got to get beyond those and work together. And I know these two guys well. That's for sure.
Let me give each one of you a magic wand for a minute. Take away, you're very powerful people here, but magic wand. If you could do one thing that you think would have the biggest impact on Union County's economy, what would that be? Senator, let's start with you.
Well, I'm thinking probably an 11-0 undefeated season for a Rutgers football team. But other than that, my magic wand. But my magic wand is to get the tunnel to New York, a tunnel to New York, so that folks in the western end of the county and in the suburbs can easily commute back and forth, and that will promote lots of investment in the entire state, and particularly in Union County.
Assemblyman?
I'd like to see county taxes reduced. Clearly, I'd like to see state taxes reduced. The local governments, I think, are doing a pretty good job, but the county is 20% of most of the tax burden. The state obviously has some of the highest rates, and I'm hoping that legislation will pass at the state level, and hopefully we can reduce taxes, because people vote their pocketbook, and people are very concerned about their pocketbook.
Jim?
If I had a magic wand, staying on the national level, I would make Dodd-Frank disappear, the regulation of the financial industry, because it has been such a brake on the economy.
And let me give you all a chance to make a final closing statement. We'll start with the Senator.
I love Assemblyman Bramnick's stand-up routine. He's always welcome to hear that. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic for the country. I'm optimistic for the state, and I'm optimistic for Union County.
Great. Assemblyman?
New Jersey is a pretty cool place. Within an hour, you can go to the shore. You can go up to Pennsylvania. You can go to New York City. You can change you can go to Chinatown. You can go down to Cape May within a couple hours. It is an amazing place to live in terms of its location and its options. We just have to make sure that government understands that people can only take a certain amount of regulation and overburden taxes. If we do that, New Jersey will thrive, and I'm confident we will, based on, I think, bipartisan action and partisan action.
Great. And Jim, we'll give you the last word.
Last word. We all have to realize that everybody needs a job to have a life, to raise a family, to feel good about themselves, and jobs come from businesses. And we really need to promote our businesses, our small businesses who do most of the hiring, need to have an opportunity to expand, to grow. And with that, I'm optimistic. I think that New Jersey has tremendous potential. It's got location. It's got the highest educated workforce in the country. It is still the backbone of manufacturing and technology in this nation. There's a lot going on here, and we just we're in a rut right now, but I'm sure we're going to get out of it.
And on that optimistic note, we'll end this discussion. Thank you all very much for being here this
Thank
morning.
you.
Thank you.
Let me see this. I'm just ready.